Salutations, listeners.
Cibalas Vallejo.
Baller Magulis.
Nanu. Should I take another crack at that?
No, that was solid. I like that.
Nanu.
Nanu. All right. Something like that.
Yeah.
For those of you listening at home, Mark, we haven't even introduced. There's this guy named Mark in the podcast.
Yeah.
And he likes to sing Nanu.
It's true.
We've done many takes.
Nanu. It sounds like that. It's got the voice of like a meadowlark.
I'm more of the Nanu Nahoo. Nanu Nahoo.
Oh,
like
jeez.
That's a good.
That was Jackson, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm Colin McLeod.
Mark Call still here.
Action Jackson.
And we are the Ultra Crepidarians. Thank you for tuning in to 3 Men in a Basement, the podcast that delivers to you very meandering intros, protracted intros even.
Yes.
We also have a tendency to review movies in this podcast, and we like to deliver to you, the listener, an average schmuck's opinion about hidden gems in the wide world of cinema. We try and target movies in this podcast that are not super duper obscure, ones that are not blockbuster smashes. So we're not doing an Indiana Jones.
Nope. No Temple of Doom here.
No Temple of Doom. We might do a Davy Jones.
Yeah.
And we'll take it to the locker.
What about an Avengers?
Oh, an Avengers. You know, Avengers, I hear that, no.
I'm Mighty Hero Force, however, big fans.
Ooh.
So, we're not doing the big movies. We're not doing the wee movies. We're doing the movies right in the middle, where you come to us, and we dig these movies out of maybe an extended timeline, or maybe out of slight obscurity, or maybe out of that bin that you're like, I'll watch this eventually. We watch them, review them, and deliver to you our opinion about whether you need to finally take them out of that box. Pop them in the old Betamax and watch them.
Mm-hmm.
In this, the 40th episode. What? 40 is the new 20, though. So really, we're on the 20th episode.
Yeah.
Dude, 40? That's insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And to think that, like, we're getting paid to do this.
Are we?
So much.
To think that Mark and I are getting paid to do this.
So much.
It's wild.
Dude. I got all new socks.
Oh.
Tube, ankle, knee high.
I'm so glad I'm paying you enough.
Do you have any boot?
Ooh, I want to get a boot. I'm just kind of waiting until I'm ready for it.
I could use a new boot.
Okay.
Das Boot?
Das Boot.
We don't do that. That's too high profile.
Dang it.
In this, the 40th episode, we reviewed the movie
Sundirt.
Stellar Gravel.
Planet Mud.
Or Stardust.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Planet Mud. Let's discuss.
Planet Mud. I'm into it.
That's a movie of some kind. What kind of movie is that?
That's a porn.
That I wasn't gonna say it, but
It is. I looked it up.
Ooh.
Now tell me, Mark.
Ooh.
tell me, Mark. What kind of porn might Planet Mud be?
Large, spherical, little sticky, dries out if left out.
I feel like Mark is missing a key component of Planet Mud.
Yeah.
Fine. So yeah, Stardust, pretty good. Oh God. Yeah,
So Planet Mud, also probably a band.
I would say so.
Planet
Are we
Mud.
putting that down?
Like a Puddle of Mud cover band?
No, I don't know. Planet Mud to me feels like sludge rock.
Ooh, yeah.
Right?
That's probably a thing.
Yeah. There's a sludge something. Planet Mud. They're like, oh, what's that band? It's like Dirty Wizard or something like that. Something Wizard. Wizard of Mud.
Sand Mage? I have no idea where you're going.
All right, hang on. We gotta get beyond Planet Mud. I know I derailed this. That's my fault. Planet Mud. New band name. I called it.
He's stuck in the mud.
This is another one of those girthy intros.
Stardust. Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Initial reactions? Cherries even.
Yeah, let's go over cherries.
So, going into this, I hadn't thought that I'd seen it. Having seen the whole movie, maybe I had. Some of the elements were somewhat familiar, but it might be because I was working at the theater when this movie came out, and so I would have kind of been in and out, throughout that experience. So we're going to say like a maybe cherry.
Like an unripened cherry, like when they're still yellow on the tree.
Yeah, yellow cherry, sure.
Yellow cherry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely not a cherry for me. This is one of my go-tos.
How many times?
Oh, way more than a dozen, I can tell you that. I tell people I've seen this movie 100 times. It might not be 100, but I've definitely seen it many times.
I'm in the same boat. I have seen this movie just an absurd amount of times because I really love it. We haven't discussed this, so I don't know. I think I can make an assumption about what Jackson's opinion about this movie is. We haven't discussed just how we all feel about it yet, but this movie, in my opinion, is one of those movies that's like fits the bill of this podcast like almost perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
In my experience, again, I haven't checked the scores. Like we got a metric on this, but I feel like not a lot of people have seen this, or not a ton. Like there's a subsection of the population, but I feel like this movie boxes way harder than the amount of people who have seen it. If that makes sense. Like it boxes in a different class.
It punches above its weight. Big
yes.
time.
So speaking of boxing, this movie came out in 2007.
Yes.
Sounds about right.
That's what we call a segue in the industry.
I always wanted a segue.
Yeah. All right, Paul Blart.
Very cool. Very cool.
PG-13 thoughts?
Solid.
Yeah.
Definitely PG-13.
Yeah, like, and we'll dig into it, but like, there were a lot of scenes where I felt like they pulled punches, but then there were also a lot of scenes where I thought they punched harder than I expected them to. So yeah, I would say like a solid 13. I know it doesn't really make sense without the qualifiers, but like, yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't rate this PG, although with some alterations it could have been, but it wouldn't be the movie that it is. So
yeah, I think you'd have to alter a good amount.
Yeah.
Solid PG-13, 2 hours 7 minutes. Thoughts?
It did feel long.
There's so much crammed into this movie.
That's the thing.
Like, yes, it is perhaps a slightly longer film, and maybe there's a piece of you that can feel that, but there's so much going on all the time that I don't feel like it feels like 2 hours and 7 minutes.
I was never bored.
I feel like it feels like maybe like, oh, they went a touch past the tight 90, right? Like, they overshot a little bit on the, hour and a half, and you're like, oh, wait, 2 hours and 7 minutes? It didn't feel that long.
Well, and it's one of those movies, in my opinion, that you feel like, oh, we've got to be coming up on the end, and then there's more.
But wait! There's more!
Yeah.
If you order now, we'll also throw in a set of steak knives.
I think that kind of segues a little bit too into genres. I know we haven't quite jumped into that yet, but like the 2 hours and 7, I didn't feel like it drug on at all. I really jam on a good like adventure movie, and that's one of the genres that we're going to be talking about here. I feel like it did a good job of like you getting lost up in the world. So
absolutely,
I personally did not feel like it drug on at all.
Speaking of genres, what genres do we have?
Well, as Mark mentioned, we have adventure, but there's also family, fantasy, and romance.
I feel like that encapsulates it really well.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I mean, family, I think, with slightly older kids. Like, I would probably watch this with, like, a 8+, maybe 10+ kid. I probably wouldn't watch it with my kids.
I went a different direction with the genre tag there. Because genre tag being family, I kind of just went literal in the sense that there's, like... Well, without getting into ways.
Like a sense of unity? Or like...
Yeah.
Like there is a family in the movie? Is that what you're saying?
like the movie is sort of geared towards a family dynamic.
Oh.
I don't... Okay.
I get what you're saying.
I get what you're saying, but I don't think the family tag is usually applied in that way. I think it's typically, like, appropriate for families or, a good movie to watch with your family.
Yeah, that makes more sense than what I was thinking, but it also
But you're not wrong there. You're not wrong that does fit. Adventure, this movie is one of the better examples of an adventure movie I could give you. We also did, like, Adventures in Babysitting, and in that we sort of talked ad nauseum about, like, The Mummy. The Mummy is, in my mind, like, the most classic example of an adventure flick I can think of. This movie really gives The Mummy a run for its money. Not only in that way, but also, everyone in this movie is gorgeous. And I remember reading something online that was like, nobody is born bisexual. You watch The Mummy at a formative age, and the entire cast of The Mummy turns you bisexual.
That's a fact.
This movie could similarly fit that niche. Mm-hmm. If I did watch this movie, I was a little older. For me, it was definitely The Mummy, not this movie. But if this movie were around in my youth, oh Lord.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Dangerous.
Lord have mercy.
Oh God. Oh God.
I was 15 when this movie came out.
I was not.
I similarly was not.
But yeah, 15.
Did you get sweaty?
Mm-hmm.
Who do we have that directed this movie?
So, on the director, we have Matthew Vaughn.
What has Matthew done?
Matthew has done Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, Kingsman Secret Service, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. So you've definitely...
Didn't Guy Ritchie do Lock, Stock?
See,
is he an actor in that?
Oh, yeah, he's an actor in that.
Oh, he's an actor,
yeah.
Okay.
My bad.
What did he direct?
Kingsman, Kingsman The Golden Circle, Kingsman Secret Service, X-Men First Class, Kick-Ass, and of course Stardust.
He's got like a pretty decent repertoire.
Yeah.
He did Rocket Man, too.
Yeah.
Burning out his fuse up there alone.
Yep.
Okay, so one thing that we need to mention is the writers of this movie. We don't normally go too far into the writers, except one of the writers on this movie just happens to be the very fella who wrote the story on which this film is based. And that person just happens to be...
the illustrious, the everlasting Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
Author of such classics as American Gods.
The Sandman Chronicles.
Oh.
And Good Omens, which Amazon Prime isn't paying me to say this, but Amazon Prime just released the second season of Good Omens, which Neil Gaiman co-wrote the book that is based on with Terry Pratchett, another winner.
He did some voice work in The Simpsons?
Oh, yeah.
Who's that, Neil Gaiman?
Yeah.
Did he? That's funny. Neil Gaiman's
everywhere.
He's so unbelievably creative.
Yes.
He's the kind of person that, like, I feel like he gets plenty of credit, but at the same time, I feel like people don't often look at the breadth of his work and then compare it to, like, his contemporaries. The amount of creative shit that he has come up with, and not just like, I came up with a world and I'm adding elements to that world. That's hard enough. You get props from me for doing that. But he, like, fucking comes up with this unbelievable idea and he fleshes it out and he creates like the fucking Sandman Chronicles, unbelievably creative. But then he pivots and he fucking writes Stardust. And you're just like, where
does this come from?
Where are you getting this? Yeah. And can I have a little bit?
Well, and the other thing is he's also an incredibly great orator. So he narrates almost all of the audiobooks that are made of his projects. My favorite was American Gods because it was a full cast. So they had the cast record it, and then he would record the interims between chapters. So I thought that was just a really creative way of doing an audiobook. One of my other favorites that Neil Gaiman did was a collected works of Viking mythos and Norse mythos.
I have seen that, yeah.
Oh, so good.
So, Neil Gaiman, you know him. You love him. If you don't know him,
I'll fight you.
Jackson will fight you and then probably say sorry and walk you to a bookstore or pull up a Kindle and be like, here's some Neil Gaiman for you as an apology for my assault.
Read it at gunpoint.
My bad.
Okay, so who do we have in this?
Don't we have in this movie?
In this gorgeous cast.
All right. Right off the bat, fucking Ian McKellen. Yeah, he was in the movie, but he was
the narrator.
Give it another crack.
Ian McKellen.
What did I say?
McClellan.
Just, if you give me another one, I won't have to leave it in. It's not, I'll happily leave it in. I'm just saying, like...
It's Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen.
McAleenan.
He's Welsh now.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Ian McKellen? Ian McKellen? Ian McKellen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Give it to us again.
Ian McKellen. Just leave it all in. Whatever. Ian McKellen. McKellen. Fuck you.
Gandalf.
You're a wizard.
Yeah.
Gandalf. But you don't see his face.
Oh, you know what? Shit. I did not recognize him as who he is.
Really?
Yeah. Charlie Cox.
Yeah.
Who I know better for his role in, I guess, the more recent Daredevil movies.
Yes.
Or series, rather.
As Daredevil.
Yeah.
Daredevil.
He looked recognizable, but like I didn't peg him as who he was. Interesting. Who else we got?
Claire Danes.
Derek Lanes.
An absolute gem.
Or Ruby.
Yeah. So you've definitely seen Claire Danes in quite a few things. Romeo plus Juliet.
She plays Juliet.
Yeah. Homeland, Brigsby Bear, which was actually on our podcast once.
Wait, who did she play in Brigsby
She
Bear?
was Emily.
That doesn't help me.
Emily was one of the people.
Which people?
In the movie.
Oh, those people.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Oh,
See, now you got it.
She was one of the friends that was helping him make his movie.
Claire Danes was?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to go back and rewatch it now.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to rewatch.
Master Nun.
Temple Grandin. I also really loved her in Me and Orson Welles. She played Sonia Jones.
Oh, who was she in Terminator 3?
Kate Brewster.
Okay.
But, yeah, Claire Danes. Total gem, total babe.
Who else we got?
David Kelly, who you might recognize. First of all, he was Michael in Waking Ned Devine.
Which we might be reviewing.
It's possible.
Because it's on our suggestion list. We have a suggestion list,
Yeah,
guys,
baby!
now.
Oh.
He's phenomenal in that movie. Absolutely phenomenal. He played Grandpa Joe in the 2005 Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
I wouldn't be putting that at the top of my resume.
I wouldn't
But
either.
he was Grandpa Joe in that movie.
But it was
We're
one of his...
we're outing him right now.
It was one of his more recent projects.
Yes, I would say that's probably the most recognizable for me.
And right in front of that was... He played the priest from Laws of Attraction. And he also played Treval in Agent Cody Banks 2.
Classic.
Oh, yeah. No, that's where I know him from.
Yeah.
Agent Cody Banks 2. That's,
Yeah. That's
man,
where everybody would know him from.
If I had a nickel for every time I saw that movie, I would not have any money.
Right.
And while we're on the bisexual train, Ben Barnes.
Ben Barnes.
Ben Barnes. Prince Caspian himself.
I don't think that C.S. Lewis would have loved you salivating over a male cast member.
He
No, he would have.
doesn't have a choice because he's dead.
He is dead. That is written down.
It's a little dark, but sure.
He was also Tom Ward in Seventh Son.
Isn't that the seventh son?
Of the Seventh Son.
Yeah.
Isn't that like the dude?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is the Seventh Son. And also, Ben Barnes at his absolute finest in Shadow and Bone. Oh,
Never saw it.
drool-worthy. Anyway.
Henry Cavill's in this fucking movie.
Yeah, buddy.
Cavill?
It's
Ian
Cavill.
McKellen.
It is Cavill. Ian McClellan. See, I am going to take another crack at it, so I am not on record as saying...
Find me in on that record.
Henry Cavill's in this movie.
Yeah. If you've seen The Witcher or Man of Steel,
He plays the Superman.
he was also in The Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce.
I'm going to rapid fire real quick through like the last three. Nathaniel Parker, I would not have been able to give his name, but if anybody has seen Beverly Hills Ninja, he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
That's where I know him from immediately. He was the English guy who was, the bad guy. Peter O'Toole, who is one of the greatest actors of all time.
Absolute legend.
He is the sort of like main character, let's say, in High Spirits. He was also Lawrence in Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, what else was...
Wasn't he also in Troy?
Yes.
Yeah.
He played one of the older fellas in Troy, because Peter O'Toole's been through the ages.
Oh, he's a legend.
And the last one is Mark Strong, who you'll definitely know from something, but he's probably going to be one of those faces and not the names. I recognize him most from The Brothers Grimsby. He plays the not Sacha Baron Cohen brother. And then I also know him from Sherlock Holmes.
Yep.
He plays the villain in the first Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes
He was also
movie.
Merlin in Kingsman.
Yes, he was.
I'm going to throw one more in there. Jason Fleming is a face that you'll recognize, but he is one of those chameleonic actors that just kind of disappears into his role. Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Deep Rising, and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Absolute phenomenal actor, and he shows up in some of the weirdest places.
He's a really good actor.
He's very good.
He plays Dr. Jekyll and Mr.
Yeah.
Hyde in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I fucking love that movie.
Oh, it's a good one.
I think he was in a lot of Guy Pearce's movies. I see
Yep.
Lock, Stock on his known by, but he's definitely a recognizable face. Very English looking, if that.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a thing.
Yeah, that's a thing, right?
Yep, that's a thing.
Yeah. So is Mark Strong, in my opinion, but...
Well, he looks like he works out.
Yeah.
He does. Okay,
Strong.
so...
No, I was picking up what you were throwing down.
we transitioned quickly off the joke. I was like, I want to
You're
make
like,
sure that
"Oh."
landed. Womp womp.
Womp womp.
Let's throw a summary in here, if we will, if you guys wouldn't mind. Perhaps
Yeah.
offering up to the table. In a countryside town, bordering on a magical land, a young man makes a promise to his beloved that he'll retrieve a fallen star by venturing into a magical realm. That's the movie.
It actually hurt my throat a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that's one of those descriptions where it's like, all of that is correct, and that's probably all I would ever tell anybody. But just, like, buckle up, because the movie is, like, full beyond that.
It
like,
is way more than that.
There's a lot more going on.
That's like the first
that.
10 minutes, really.
Yeah, basically,
Kinda, yeah. But you really
that's
don't want to go further than that, right? Like,
right.
you want,
It tease it up, you know.
As opposed to, like, Victoria and Abdul, where it's like, this is about a relationship between Queen Victoria and a man named Abdul from India, and you're like,
yep, that's the movie.
That every inch of that movie is just that.
Yep.
This is not.
You should still watch it, but that's the movie.
Yes. Okay, so would we recommend this movie?
100,000%.
Agreed.
There's not a single person I've ever met that I wouldn't recommend this movie to.
There are probably a couple that I would hold back on, but not many. And I think it's anybody who has an aversion to anything involving fantasy. Those are the people that I like. You know, there are people I'm like, oh, you know, blah blah blah, and I'll drop like a casual Harry Potter reference, and they'll be like, yeah, I've never seen Harry Potter. I don't like fantasy movies.
See,
and I'd be like, okay,
we're not friends.
In addition to me not wanting to continue this conversation or really know you any further than this conversation, I wouldn't recommend Stardust to you either.
Right. Okay, so for me, yeah, I would recommend it.
Watch what you say.
Yeah. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna. I think I would recommend it more to other people than I would myself, and I can't qualify that at this point. I enjoyed it, but I can feel a palpable difference between how much I enjoyed it versus how much you guys are frowning at me right now.
Jackson and I are actively lacing up boxing gloves.
And that's fine. I'm here to make you upset.
Okay. I appreciate the honesty.
But I would still call it a wreck. So we can still say wrecks all
a
around.
wreck as in recommendation.
Yes.
Not that movie was a fucking train wreck.
Don't you?
What you said. No. I enjoyed it enough to recommend it to other people. So if that's what we're saying at this point, because we're not rating it.
We're gonna get in a scratch fight.
Yep.
I know it.
And that's good.
Let's do it.
That's good. Fine.
But I appreciate your candor.
I don't, but that's fine.
Are we ready to blah 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 blah?
Blah, 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 blah.
He brought back the Donald Duck.
Thank you.
He did.
He never.
That was
that was a sexy Donald Duck.
Dude, Mark is
You
like,
hear the jowls on that?
I kind of missed it because I was focused on your face, and your face was a mix between surprise and arousal. You got flustered there.
Surprisal!
Surprisal.
that duck's got wrinkles. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, hang on. You know what? I really want to dissect that, but I really want to talk about surprisal.
Yes.
Because that's a thing now.
Yes.
So, it's not really a band, I don't think, but like getting so scared or startled that you like pop a boner. That's surprisal.
Yeah.
Don't want that because
I don't want it either. I'm just saying it's a
Why do you
thing.
think I watch horror movies all the time?
I can't deny that cancer exists just because it's it's horrible. I don't want cancer, but it is a thing. Surprisal is a thing.
No, it's kind of awesome. It's
nobody
like,
likes it. But
Yeah, but I would rather like turtle in at surprise, not like,
again, I think that's
the
the
bone.
standard reaction in the animal kingdom, right? But then you've got
Suck it in.
the fainting goats that like, it can't be a good defense mechanism to just like seize up and fall over.
that is surprisal, right? I mean, the goat.
They're
who
not
does that.
popping a boner.
Right, but
They
they are
rigid.
getting hard.
They're getting quite
I suppose
rigid.
they are getting hard, yeah. Yes, I stand corrected.
I mean,
And they
Does it
erected.
have to be limited to the phallic member?
no, they go tits up.
They
Goat tits, but yeah.
yeah, but I mean tits is tits, right?
They goat tits up.
It's gross, but whatever.
Goat Tits Up is a band name for sure.
Goat tits up.
Goat Tits Up.
Or even just goat tits. Like,
Goat tits up with their hit single Surprisal.
Surprisal!
I'm going to start working Surprisal into everyday conversation.
Yes,
it's going to be
absolutely.
difficult because I don't get surprised.
Oh, it'll be hard.
It will be.
God damn
It will be.
it.
I'll be in stiff competition.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're past spoilers. How does this movie begin?
It begins by a wall.
Yes.
So, okay.
Build it.
Hear me out. Let's think about this. This movie, like we said, is chock full of sort of like delightful little asides and a whole bunch of stuff going on. And I know we say this every week, but I feel like we should try to march through the bones of it and sort of leave a lot of the accoutrement to the side, only because A, we could Eddie there for a very long time.
Oh, yeah.
And B, I feel like that's a lot of the sort of like, plucky, enjoyable parts of this movie are like the little, all the stuff they decided to cram into it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to kind of ruin it, even though we're in spoilers, don't want to ruin it too much for the listening audience.
Can't take everything out of it.
So it starts with kind of a flashback, so to speak.
Yeah.
The movie takes place 18 years after the first scene. This is a young man
By the name of Tristan.
Tristan's the son.
Yeah, it starts with his father.
Oh, yeah. Dunstan.
Dunstan? Checks in?
Yeah.
Mark, have I ever told you that you remind me a little bit of Jason Alexander in the movie Dunstan Checks In?
No, you haven't.
I haven't mentioned that to you. I haven't mentioned that to you like a couple times a week for like the last 4 years. No? Okay. Mark is shaking his head emphatically.
Looking for like 50 references of it. Yeah, every single day.
Okay, so this movie starts with a voiceover by Sir Ian McKellen.
Sir Ian McKellen.
And so that is something that we didn't mention in pre-spoiler times. Ian McKellen is the narrator of this movie. However, his narration, which is the case in some movies, is sort of limited to the beginning, I think maybe a patch or two in the middle, and then the very end.
Yep.
It is not a constant revisiting of the narration, but he opens talking about a young man in a village called Wall, so named because a wall is running right beside it. I do like that they just sort of
lay it out.
They don't describe where this wall goes. Like, does it encircle the town? Does it run somewhere else? What is going on exactly with this wall? There's
not important to the story.
No, and I really appreciate that. And they do that a number of times. They're just like, we're going to walk away from this, and we don't owe you an explanation
and
at
you
all.
Can fill in the blanks with whatever you want.
Right.
So, in this town called Wall, there's a young man who decides that he wants to cross the wall.
Which no one has ever done.
No. There's a little part of the wall. The wall's not that big to begin with. I mean, it's like an 8-foot wall?
Yeah.
Not even.
Not even.
Like, it's like 6 feet.
You can almost peer over it. Maybe you can peer. Maybe a tall fella can peer over it.
It's like the height of a person.
Yeah.
I could jump and see over it.
Okay. Yeah. So 6-ish feet. There is a part of the wall, though, that is broken down. Not a great deal broken down. Just like a little kind of V in the wall. And there's a guard that sits there night and day and makes sure that nobody crosses over. And he tries to get in, and how does it go?
I mean, he gets through.
Pretty well.
He does
Thank
get through.
God the guard was like 90.
What was his motivation again? I mean, I know,
He just wanted to see.
I think he wanted to cut through.
Oh, yeah, because his whole thing was like, there's a field. It's just a field.
He's like, go around. He's like, no, it's just a field. I can just walk over there through the field. So he ends up walking through the field and stumbles upon a small village. And he goes in, and it becomes evident right away that this village is not in our universe.
No.
Mystical and magical things abound. There's a tiny elephant. There's a jar full of eyeballs that all just sort of follow him. It becomes really, really clear very fast. And he ends up, as one does, right? He meets a princess who's been captured by a witch and enslaved. Allegedly. And then the witch fucks off to the tavern and he fucks off into the princess.
Yep.
Yeah, that was real weird. And just like...
For you, maybe.
Yeah, but it was like,
Prude.
Hey, here, dude, just come on up in here, this wagon here, and we're gonna
lock the door, and if this wagon's a rockin', don't come a knockin'.
Yeah, I mean, it was important for the story, but like...
If I saw either of those people and they propositioned me...
Well, yeah, I mean, they were attractive people.
For me...
Is that just what happens with cute people?
That's it, yeah.
That is, yeah.
That's
just bumping in wagons?
So
that's why I read that in a book.
Yeah.
Once, and
written by Neil Gaiman?
Yeah. And I was like, okay. So that must be how the rest of the world lives.
And for me, this particular scene felt very much like telling a fairy tale, right? It was like, this doesn't happen to anybody ever. So it was very much like someone was reading a fairy tale out of a book kind of thing. But it becomes clear the further you watch that this is not just a fairy tale out of a book. Like, this is what the world is outside the village of Wall.
Yeah, so zooming out, outside of the narrative, outside of that comment, I did want to mention that, like, I love the fact that this movie, this story, it is a modern fairy tale.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that for it. It takes sort of the classic fairy tale elements, it combines a whole bunch of them for a sort of feature-length narrative. You know, it's not a Rumpelstiltskin, it's over in like 30 seconds. That sounded dirty.
30 seconds in the wagon, Rumpelstiltskin.
But it is a sort of modern fairy tale, and Gaiman has sort of updated it for the modern palate, modern audiences, made it quippy and enjoyable in that sense. And I really appreciated that, because I feel like fairy tales feel so trite, and he sort of breathed new life into them. Anyway, sorry. So this young fella stoops with this young woman. He goes back to his village, and 9 months later, she sends him a package through the UPS.
Yeah.
Package from his package. It's a baby.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Flash forward 18 years. We've got young Tristan.
Yeah.
Who also has delusions of grandeur and rising above his station.
To be fair, I think the events of the movie suggest that perhaps they weren't delusions of grandeur.
Right.
They were recognition of grandeur.
As far as he knows, they're delusions.
Yes, in this point in the movie, they are most assuredly delusions.
So, Tristan is a lowly shop boy who has a crush on the lovely Victoria, throwing rocks at her window, trying to woo her gently.
It didn't begin and end with the rocks at the window. He's not just bothering her. He did speak to her after throwing the rocks.
And she's definitely leading him on.
Yes, she is 100% stringing him on.
The worst.
So he goes to his job at the shop, and she shows up, cuts in front of literally everyone, and demands sugar and flour and potatoes and chocolate and eggs, and says
someone to carry it home for him.
And says, "Walk me home." And he's like, "Okay." So he does, and he gets fired for it. Big shock there. What happens when you abandon your job in the middle of the day?
Yep.
I'm a big labor rights guy, but I gotta say, that particular
was irresponsible.
display, that I don't know if I could justify him keeping his job after that.
Yeah, I would let him down gently, be like, "Hey, so you understand that letting her cut in front of literally the entire town who wanted to buy provisions and walking off in the middle of the day with no intentions of coming back is kind of a red flag?"
I feel like if he demonstrates that in front of the whole town with no shame, I feel like my question to him would be like, what if she came in here and asked you to open up the safe and give her everything inside?
Yeah.
He would.
Yep.
Like, his actions definitely demonstrate that is exactly what he would do.
Also, I didn't see her pay for any of it.
Probably
no.
didn't.
And I couldn't justify that as an employer.
Right.
I mean, she paid for it with his employment.
Yeah, she saved Mr. Monday money by no longer employing a useless employee.
Yep.
But in his defense, he does the responsible thing and takes all of the money that he has saved to date and buys champagne and treats to take her on a secret date in the middle of the night.
Yeah, not paying back his employer for losses.
Which just doesn't make any sense. Like, there's like a quick little scene where he gets pushed around by
Humphrey,
played by
Henry Cavill.
And like, it's clear that Victoria fancies Humphrey, and like everybody knows it, but he's still like pursuing it, and she lets him take her on this like weird little nighttime picnic and drink the champagne. I don't know. It didn't make sense to me. Why?
I don't know. It makes sense from her perspective. She gets free champagne.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to cut in real quick with one of my quotes, which we normally say for the end, but it is timely because we're discussing the scene. One of my quotes is actually not a quote from the movie. It is, in fact, a quote from Mark while he was watching this scene. And after she says that she intends to marry Humphrey while sitting on this secret date in the middle of the night with Tristan, and out loud, Mark just goes, "Well, give him the champagne back then."
We're just talking about how good it tastes, It's like, fuck you, man. It's terrible.
She
And I wasn't
is
sure.
using the hell out of him. And
absolutely.
Not in the good way.
Is she, though? Because, like, he's being, like, so willfully ignorant that, like, I don't even, like, feel bad for him. Like,
No, you're not supposed to feel bad for him, but it still takes a shitty person to see somebody who is
clearly naive.
Yeah, and just sort of lean into it and being like, yeah, I will accept all of these gifts, and not say clearly and assertively, "Listen, Tristan, I am not interested in you. I want to be with Humphrey. Please stop sending me gifts." That is what she should have done.
Yep.
And it wasn't even that she was like too awkward to say no. She was loving it. And she loved the fact that they were like fighting over her and there was a competition going.
Oh, the attention, the gifts, the doting. She loved every second of it.
Worse.
But at least she was like honest that like, yeah, this is what's happening with Humphrey and I'm gonna probably say yes to marrying him. Like, I guess there's that.
I don't think that's a defense.
I mean, she could have not said it. I'm not saying this to try to defend her. I still think she's, like, a butthole. But I'm just saying that, like, Tristan walked into this with both eyes open.
Like, she signposted that she was not interested.
Yep, she was like, hey, I'm marrying Humphrey in a week.
Yeah,
and he's like, cool, I'm gonna make sure that doesn't happen. And she's like,
good luck, bud.
Yeah.
Go ahead and try, man.
I think the reason why I don't mind so much is that, like, she puts up a wall and he just, like, throws himself against the wall and then just stands up and throws himself against the wall again. Like, it's not...
Which is a beautiful segue into what happens next.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We should probably pick up the pace because we're going nitty gritty, but this is kind of fundamental. Kind of after she kind of just shares that what her intentions are with Humphrey, they both witness a shooting star, and some back and forth. And he says, look, to prove to you how much I love you, I'm gonna go get that star and bring it back to you. And she makes this, like, silly agreement that, like, all right, if you bring me this fallen star, we'll get married.
By my birthday.
By my birthday in 1 week. I guess we'll get married?
Which a perfectly rational person would be like, yeah, that's not actually possible. So this is me blowing you off.
Right. But Tristan's just dumb.
Yeah.
He's a little dumb.
Yep.
Throughout the whole... Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is how people typically find love.
Yeah.
Is, they make a wager based on 2 competing quarters. And whoever wins, obviously they love them for the rest of their life unconditionally.
Right.
Marriage.
That's marriage, guys.
That's how it works.
Yeah, so this really is, like Mark said, this is the catalyst for the entire movie. This is what sets off the quest. This is the quest. This is what sets off the sequence of events.
The hero's journey.
Yeah, that ultimately everything unfolds around. There is a small scene right before this where they actually cut to the kingdom of Stormhold, which is the kingdom on the other side of the wall. And there is this exceedingly grandiose castle. It's a little like the White Tower in the Neverending Story where, like, it keeps zooming in and you're like, oh, that's bigger than I thought. And then it zooms in again and you're like, oh shit, that's a window down there? Wow, this is really big. And then it keeps going. It's a little like that, right? It's like basically a fucking mountain. It's like
80 stories high.
Yeah, it's like a mountain. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so it cuts to this, like, king who's sitting in a bed, and let's just give the top notes basically. He has 10 sons, I think.
He had 7 sons, 3 of which were dead, and 4 of which were still living. And the whole thing is that this royal family achieves the throne by killing everyone else that has a claim to it.
At least that's what the father did.
That's the tradition.
And he was very proud of it.
Yes.
That it was before his father was even getting sick. He had managed to knock off the other 13 brothers.
Yes. So he's dying on his deathbed and is very disappointed in his sons that 4 of them are still alive. So he's got this jewel, the royal jewel, around his neck. And he's like, all right, here's the deal. Since y'all haven't killed each other yet, I'm going to make y'all a deal. Whoever restores my ruby will gain the throne. So the stone around his neck magically levitates and shoots off into the sky, which we come to find out comes into a collision course with the star, which causes it to fall.
That's how shooting stars happen.
Yeah. Get hit by a necklace.
Yeah. So this shooting star is the same one that Tristan and Victoria see. It is also seen by 3 witches, one of which is played by Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Did we mention that Michelle Pfeiffer is in this?
We did not mention Michelle Pfeiffer.
How did we miss that?
That's really weird. She should have shown up on the thing.
On the top billing. Little nugget for you.
Dude, she's not even...
No, that can't be right.
That's so weird. Okay, you know what? Let's do this. We're going to leave this in as a nugget, and we're going to blame IMDb for the reason that we forgot to mention that Michelle Pfeiffer was in this movie. Because she's somehow not in the top billed cast, and I have no idea how.
And those of you that ventured beyond spoilers, like brave little boys and girls and others that you did, we appreciate you.
Jackson appreciates you. I pity you.
She's on it. She's really far down.
Yeah. So she's fucking amazing. And she plays one of 3 witches, sisters, who it becomes evident pretty quick. They're not only old and decrepit, but they can maintain their youth by eating the heart of a fallen star. And that seems really strange to the listener, to the viewer, until you see that a fallen star in the kingdom of Stormhold on the magical side of the wall is in fact Claire Danes, and is a beautiful woman who has fallen to earth, left a massive crater, and shines when she feels giggly.
Yeah, don't we all?
So off Tristan marches, and what does he find?
He finds the wall, guarded by a 97-year-old man.
I'm going to call him Pop Pop.
Pop Pop. So he goes to the wall.
Mark seems unsure about Pop Pop.
He tries to go through the wall and pulls the same trick that his dad did, which was basically a, what's that over there? And then run past him. But Pop Pop has had 18 years since his dad pulled that trick to figure out how to pull a ninjutsu on his ass and drop him like a sack of hot potatoes.
He went up to Scotland and he learned the national Scottish form of martial arts, which is known as fuck you.
Yeah.
Rafikiism.
Yes. So he wanders back home with his tail between his legs and tells his dad all about, his bad experience with Victoria and this and that. And his dad finally decides that this is the time to tell him about his mom and about his personal journey beyond the wall, and gives him the package that was in the basket that he was brought in, which includes a Babylon candle.
Yeah, it's just like a black candle. They don't really talk about how it works or anything really about it.
I don't think the mechanisms are well detailed, even in Stormhold.
Even terribly important.
No, not really. But in the note, I think it's referenced that, like, lighting this candle is the fastest way to travel or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Think of me. Yeah, she says, to find me, think of me and light the candle.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, without missing a beat, while he's still, like, up in the attic talking to his dad, he lights the candle real quick and boom, he is now at the star.
Which, okay, there are many things in this movie for which you will have to suspend disbelief. One thing that did catch me, though, a little bit is for a boy who has never experienced a lick of magic to suddenly be transported through a magical portal on the back of a candle and then arrive in a crater. He seems to take it pretty well.
He takes it very well. He's very well adjusted.
Takes it in stride. He doesn't, it really doesn't rattle him too much.
There'd be a lot of shrieking on my behalf if that were the case.
He even, arrives and says, Mother? Mother? As if that was what he expected would happen.
Right.
When he lit that candle. I would not expect that to happen. But hey, I'm me, he's him.
It's worth noting that Claire Danes is not his mother.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he makes, the quick, bit that, he was thinking about his mom, and then all of a sudden he thought about the star and what he had to get for Victoria. But anyway, let's see. So, he meets the star. The viewer finds out the star is actually Claire Danes. He effectively kidnaps her.
100% kidnaps her.
Chains her up to a tree,
Yeah, the witches are hunting her. They basically had to use the last heart that they had. So Michelle Pfeiffer got young again, but then every time she uses magic, she gets old. So she's trying to use low magical items. She's basically on battery saving mode.
Yep.
She's trying to use magical items that don't use too much magic in order to find the star, locate it. She's worried that another witch is going to beat her out. Meanwhile, in preparation for questing for the jewel, the princes, 2 of them are murdered, and there are 2 of them left. Primus and Septimus, so the sort of heads and the tails. And they both set off, and they're seeking the jewel, but because Claire Danes is wearing the necklace that the jewel is in, because that's what knocked her out of the sky, they're kind of inadvertently seeking her as well. So everybody is just sort of converging on her and hunting for her.
So the witches are hunting for the star to keep their youth and beauty. The princes are hunting for the jewel to restore their kingdom. And Tristan and Yvain, played by Claire Danes, are marching back to the wall to present to Victoria.
And in this, like Mark said, he has a magical chain that basically captures things. Let's just say that. And he ties her up to a tree. A unicorn comes by and cuts her loose.
Because, of course.
Yeah.
Which, this all sounds really
insane.
Yeah, it seems like too much. It doesn't feel like too much in the movie.
No.
But it sounds, when you're describing it feels like, wow, this is too much.
It feels organic to the story, but
yes.
The story's bananas.
Yes. And that's kind of its thing, right? It's way over the top.
Let me offer a counterpoint.
Oh boy.
That
here we go. Jackson, strap the gloves on.
You just mentioned a little bit. You said, it feels like it's too much, but you know what? It does.
I said when I describe it.
Right. For me personally, and I know that I am isolated, based upon the daggers that I see coming out of both of your eyes toward me, they're not having fun anymore, that's why I'm here. I felt like it was too much. I still enjoyed it, this bit that we're discussing right now, but clearly I am in the minority in thinking that maybe perhaps it was too much.
And that was Mark's minority report.
Because, where the fuck does this unicorn come from?
It's magic,
It's old friend. There are unicorns everywhere.
Where did it come from? Why did it let her go? What was its desire?
When a mommy unicorn and a daddy unicorn love each other very much, they clap cheeks and make unicorn babies that then free stars that are chained to trees. What are you not getting about this?
What do unicorns and fallen stars have in common? The answer, nothing.
Magic.
Shut up. Okay. All right. So back to the story.
So cuts her loose. Yep. She climbs on the unicorn, and the unicorn is sort of like taking her through this forest. Meanwhile, the witch sort of got ahead of her, and she can stay in communicado with her sisters because she's got Zoom through her ring. She's got a Zoom ring.
Yep.
And so she rubs her ring, and then a Zoom window pops up, and she talks to them. And the connection's pretty good. I didn't think Stormhold would have as good a Wi-Fi as they do, but
honestly, it was incredible,
seamless. And so
they've got Starlink.
OnStar.
Ooh, that's good too. Okay. So
Star Pie. I had nothing. Couldn't think of something.
So the witch sets up a trap. She knows that the unicorn and what was her name again?
Yvain.
That they're headed in a particular direction down a particular road. Witch gets in front of them, sets up this fake inn. She uses some of her magic to create an inn. Side note, probably takes a lot of magic to create an inn, right?
I would think so.
Yep.
Not a drop.
Doesn't affect her.
Yeah.
I don't think you are qualified to weigh in on how much magic it takes to make an inn versus try and fix your
That's accurate.
Saggy witch titties.
I will
Which
say...
was a part. I'm not making that up.
Saggy witch titties.
I will say...
Band name.
Big time.
Saggy witch titties. Yep.
I will say...
Wait, saggy witch titties or saggy witch tits? I feel like the second one has a better cadence.
But one had more of a lop than the other. Can we go saggy witch teat? Or should we keep it plural?
I think tits.
Tit. Oh, tits? Okay.
Saggy witch tits.
Saggy witch tits.
I will say, though, I'm in Mark's camp on this, in that was, like, the glaring, obvious bit to me. Like, she turned the guy into a goat and she got, like, liver spots on her hand.
The witch.
Yeah, and then she turns this chariot into a full-fledged 5-bedroom inn, complete with stables and a kitchen and a roaring fireplace with a giant hearth and a tavern and nothing.
I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is, the thing I love about this movie is how fucking unapologetic it is, right? We already covered this with The Wall. Like, The Wall is something you could pick apart. Where does it go? It just to infinity?
And how does it keep the magic out?
Where does it end? Like, but
it didn't take me out.
But that's the thing.
I'm
is
not
like
complaining.
that's the thing is like the writers, Neil Gaiman especially, but then the writing staff on the movie, they found a way to basically be like, we need fantastical things, and we're not going to fucking spoon feed you why all of it makes sense.
Yep.
You know, for all you fucking know, inanimate objects take less magic to transmute than living objects.
Yeah.
So yeah, she turns a guy into a goat, and it takes a lot. She turns a chariot into a pickle stand. Sure, fucking do it 6 times a week.
Go nuts.
Like, it's so fantastical.
Yeah.
And there's so much crammed in that you can just sort of make something up to limp along. I wouldn't call it a plot hole. It's like adjacent to it, but I don't think it would be a game changer. And for that reason, I feel like as a writer, you can just kind of walk away from it.
Yeah, for me, it was just kind of silly. It was like, all right, I'll allow it. And then just kind of move on.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, though, I brought this little fissure up, and I will say that while I noticed it, it didn't pull me out of the scene. It didn't ruin the movie or anything like that. It was just something I noticed. Anyway, she ends up at the inn, the witch inn. She goes in, she's relaxing. The witch is telling her about, I'm going to give you this massage.
The star is.
Yeah,
Yeah. Gets her on a bed. She's about ready to stab this woman in the heart, and
there's a knock at the door.
Yeah, and it ends up being the prince and Tristan, who just kind of happened to bump into each other, and they kind of knew that they were both heading in the same direction.
Well, let's be clear. Tristan bumped into him quite literally by running at the carriage, jumping to catch onto it, and smacking face first into the side.
Kind of an important aspect to that is Tristan knew to try to get onto that carriage because he decided to basically give up, laid down, fell asleep. And then the stars, her sisters, kind of woke him up with some exposition, basically. He woke up to them saying, like, you gotta go save our sister. She's in a trap from the witch just down the road. There's a carriage you've got to get on, otherwise you won't make it there in time and she'll die. But then it also explained sort of what happened to the last star that fell. The witches tricked her, and they dropped hints before this, but this really said it explicitly that in order for the heart to be the most potent it can be, the star has to be comfortable and happy, and that kind of makes them glow. And that's when you want to remove the heart, when they're happy and glowing.
So that's why the witch is pampering her.
Yeah, if they're scared, or if they're worried, or if they're whatever, it won't have as much magic, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So Primus is riding in his carriage to chase this ruby, and Tristan bumps into him. They ride to the inn together, and they interrupt the witch, catch her in the act, as it were. And
They catch her in the rye.
Primus decides, oh, there's a bathtub here that's full of hot bathwater. I'm going to wash the road off of me. So he lays down in the bath, and Yvain comes down, and he's like, oh, yes, you must be the innkeeper. Wait, the necklace! Bring me the necklace! And that's when the witch comes down and literally slits his throat in the middle of the bath.
She relieved his neck of some blood.
Yes.
Blue blood.
Blue blood.
Which was probably because they wanted to maintain that PG-13 rating.
Honestly, yeah, probably.
More than likely.
A slit throat in a PG-13 movie is really severe. You're probably exactly right that it's... But, like, it's fucking magic. Who cares? It's blue blood.
And they're royals, so the whole, like, they're blue bloods.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Also, one thing that I feel like as many times as I've seen this, sometimes you don't notice things until you look at them with, like, a more critical lens.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I feel like I didn't appropriately identify while I was previously watching this was Primus is like actually a good guy.
Yeah.
And they call it out explicitly, like the priest guy. He says to Primus, like, you need to find it so your brothers don't. Our first benevolent king. And then, like, it becomes evident that he didn't kill any of his brothers. All of the killing was done by other brothers. And then he's also just like a pretty decent guy. Like, Tristan, like, out of the woods fucking, like, attacks the side of his carriage. And he could have killed him. And he's just like, all right, come with me.
Yeah.
He's all right, come on.
He's like, it's going to take a lot more than that to end my game here.
He's actually a pretty decent
guy. And he's just going to drive off and leave him in the woods, which, of the things that you could do to a stranger who just attacked your carriage, is probably the most kind
probably
thing
the nicest,
to do.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, all this discussion of his merit is not really merited because he's dead.
Mucho dead, as they say.
So that just kind of kicks off a little scene where they're trying to get away from the witch.
So basically they get cornered, and she basically is burning the fucking place to the ground. They have just the teeny tiniest bit of a Babylon candle left, and Tristan holds Yvain and basically says, think of home, and then puts his hand into the flames and lights the Babylon candle. Unfortunately, there's two people who are now sort of attached to the candle.
Who have different homes.
And they both thought of home, and so her home is in the sky, his home is in Wall, and they ended up halfway between in the clouds.
And his hand is no longer burned.
Yeah.
No, it is. It is. They actually, yeah, they do.
They bandage his hand up and everything.
Oh,
and they call to it, when they're like tied together. She like grabs his hand like sweetly, and he kind of like winces. They show it as kind of burned, and like he winces, and then he kind of smiles.
I didn't notice that.
I actually didn't notice the hand grabbing thing either until
fair enough.
This watch, but
they're picked up by pirates in the clouds.
As one does, right?
Lightning pirates,
which is so fucking creative.
It's so cool.
Like it's this steampunk style ship. It's a dirigible. Actually, I have curtains in my bathroom that are basically this ship. Think of a sort of old-style galleon kind of pirate ship.
Like a brigantine, almost.
But instead of having masts, it has ropes that go up to like an inflatable bladder, and the ship acts as a dirigible and sails through the skies. If you are familiar with the word steampunk at all, you know exactly what I'm describing. If you've never heard that word before,
look it up, and
it will be one of the first pictures. But basically they sail through the fucking sky, and they have these giant metal nets that extend from each side of the ship, and they get struck by lightning, and then they harvest the lightning, bottle it, and sell it. And it's just like, there were so many fantastical things in this story already. You didn't need to do this, but he did.
It was so cool.
Neil Gaiman did, and it's fucking awesome.
It worked really well.
I would love to be a steampunk lightning pirate.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah.
But, Jesus, I mean, have you seen, like, first of all, what they get paid?
Yeah, it's not great.
Second of all, I mean, competitive field, like, they won't even look at you if you don't have a master's in it.
Right.
And, you probably need a PhD and some postdoc work.
Not to mention, it's very illegal.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you
can't harvest lightning without a license.
Yeah.
Most people have a PhD in crime in order to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So they get picked up by these pirates, and it's kind of funny in that, like, it starts off, they're bound, they're in the brig, it's this whole serious thing, and the captain, we didn't mention that fucking Robert De Niro's in this movie either.
Wow.
We also didn't mention there were two other people. Rupert
many,
Everett's in this movie.
Yeah.
Who was also...
Who was he?
By the way, he was in Dunstan Jackson. And then Mark Williams, the guy who plays Mr. Weasley in Harry Potter, and he's in The Borrowers and shit. He is also in this. Anyway, so they're in the brig, and who walks through the door?
Fucking Robert De Niro.
Robert motherfucking De Niro.
Fucking Nero.
Yes.
Yeah.
The D-Near.
And he's like all like angry. He's playing the Captain Hook, you know.
Captain Shakespeare.
Yeah. Super funny. Super great. Gets him alone. How does he do it?
Well, so first of all, even in that scene, it's kind of funny because he knows all of his men are listening at the door, and he starts like talking about what he's going to do to them. And every time he says something particularly gruesome, all the pirates go, ah, ah! And he gets all, you know, he knows he's sort of revving them up. And then he like very dramatically goes into this monologue that ends with him throwing a mannequin overboard. And his men knew he was going to he thought they were throwing them out of the window. So they run up to the deck and they just see this body-shaped figure plummeting to the earth. Then he drags Claire Danes up on deck and drags her to his quarters, saying basically anybody who disturbs her the next couple hours is going to get the same. And
one of the pirates is like, "You mean you're gonna?" And he's like, "No, I'm gonna throw him overboard." Oh, yeah.
So he's sort of setting this thing up where, you know, he's gonna
defenestrate them.
I was talking more about what he's going to do to her, but
fair.
You know, it didn't seem super nice what he was suggesting. So he goes down to his quarters and Tristan is waiting there. Clearly didn't throw him out the window. And then all of a sudden his demeanor changes, his voice changes, and he becomes very flamboyant.
Yep.
Very extra.
Mm-hmm.
Becomes very extra. And he is just dazzling, let's say.
Absolutely.
He is a very, very happy pirate. And it basically spills out almost immediately that he didn't really want a career in piracy. He wanted to act. He wanted to experience the world. He wanted to travel, go around, do all this stuff. And he sort of took over the family business. And unfortunately, part of that piracy business is you have to maintain a very tough persona, being cutthroat and bloodthirsty and all this shit. And he heard stories of England. Again, it was cool because he's like hearing stories about England in the same way that we hear fairy tales, right? And like, no, there's no way that place really exists. And he's hearing all these rumors about England. And he dresses them very well. And then through a con, basically convinces them that Tristan is his nephew and that he's giving Claire Danes to Tristan. But everybody sort of knows what's going on and just sort of goes along with it.
Yeah.
The Star was surprised when she saw Tristan, right? I'm just saying, like, when we walked in the scene, it appeared that she was surprised. Like, oh, there's Tristan. He's not actually dead, right?
I don't know. I don't remember that exactly. What you're saying is painting a picture in my head, but I don't know if it's accurate. She may not have been as surprised.
She had to have been in on it.
Maybe.
She was in the room when he threw a mannequin out.
Well, but then she says, "Where did you get that mannequin from?"
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to shit on it, and
yeah,
you guys
you're
are
fine.
Preventing me from shitting.
Yeah, we're gonna keep your butthole closed.
So another name that we forgot to mention in this movie is Ricky Gervais.
Yes,
he was my favorite character.
He was the best. So they pull into a port and they sell some lightning and sell it to Ricky Gervais.
That's a dope sentence. Pull into a port, sell some lightning, literally.
And yeah, so there is a sort of montage that basically involves Tristan learning swordplay, how to fight, how to dance. They're telling Robert De Niro's character about England and about what's going on, catching him up, and also Tristan and Yvonne are falling in love.
Aww.
They land, part ways, and then head off to Wall as quickly as possible.
Which is 60 miles out.
To make Victoria's birthday.
In 2 days.
I think we could probably march through the next little bit pretty quick,
yeah.
right?
So they're moving towards the Wall. At the same time, the other characters who are in search of, we've got one prince left. What's that prince name?
Septimus.
So he is also flying in that general direction. The witches tip off Michelle Pfeiffer's witch. So everyone's converging on the Wall at one point.
The Wall and the village that's like immediately adjacent, the one that his father went to when he was young.
Which is part of Stormhold.
Yes, which is on the Stormhold side of the Wall.
Yeah, they stop at that town. Tristan and Yvonne get their bumps on.
They basically admit that they love each other.
Yeah, they're bumping uglies.
They're bumping pretties, let's be honest.
That's true.
Tristan gets up early in the morning, cuts off some of her hair. You don't really understand why he's doing it at the time. Relays a message to the innkeeper to share to Yvain.
He's a pretty trustworthy guy.
Yeah.
I would trust him to deliver my messages.
Yeah, got it wrong, but whatever.
He's not an answering machine, right? And the guy's got a hookah in his hand while he's passed out. Like, I mean, this dude fucks.
Yeah.
And by fucks, I mean fucks his brain, because he's clearly, like, this dude's intoxicated.
He's the opium caterpillar.
Yeah.
Tristan goes across the wall alone, heads back to his hometown, presents the hair to Victoria. She clearly is not enamored with a sack of hair.
He goes over there basically to tell her off.
Yeah.
Basically to put that chapter of his life to bed. He went over there to basically be like, fuck off. She doesn't open the thing until later.
Right, but like...
She did say it was small, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think that he was like playing it out as he like intended to see if he would get the response that he expected.
I think you're right, but I don't think no matter what her response was, his intention was to like abandon Claire Danes.
Yeah, my interpretation was that he already knew where his heart was at.
Yes.
And he was still just going through the motions because he said he was going to do it. And she responded sort of the way that he anticipated that she would.
Yeah.
But like he almost like left it open just to kind of like see how she would react. But he was clearly already in love, and this was not about that anymore.
He's basically just fucking with Victoria's brain at this point and been like, oh, so you are as shallow as I thought you were.
Yeah. Like he was trying to prove it to himself.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So he like holds her close and brings her down into a dip, and she's like, you know what I want. And he's like, yeah, you want to grow up. And then just drops her on the ground and tries to walk away.
Baller move.
Oh, beautiful. And then
Baller
she
move.
opens up the little parcel, and she's like, why would I want just a hanky full of Stardust? And he's like, Stardust? Wait a second. Oh, shit. And realizes she can't cross the wall because there's no magic in the village.
And it's
she
said...
being the star.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's said a little bit more explicitly as well by the witches. Like, if she crosses that wall, she'll be nothing more than a lump of metallic rock. And so Claire Danes is making her way to the wall with the intention of crossing because the really fucking stupid bellhop guy was like, yeah, he went to the other side of the wall to, Victoria, true love. And that's all he said.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh my God.
And she's like, all right, I gotta hear this straight from the horse's mouth, because if it's true, I'm gonna kick his ass.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Horse's mouth, ass, donkey.
Yeah, it's there.
I couldn't put it together.
All the
but
ingredients are there. It just has to be cooked right.
one of the listeners, if you would be so kind as to cook that for me and send it in on electronic mail, that would be great.
That'd be great. So she's like inches from crossing the wall, and she is stopped by this mysterious princess that, as it turns out, is Tristan's mom. And the witches catch up, and the head witch, Michelle Pfeiffer, takes possession of both the star and the princess and fucks off to her castle.
Takes them back to her lair.
And Septimus is not far behind.
Hot on the trail.
Yeah, Tristan makes it back to the wall just after they leave. He takes the horse from the carriage and chases after them. Septimus is right behind, so they're all converging on the witch's castle now at the exact same time, like a couple yards, if a dozen, between them.
They all make it to the castle. A battle ensues, and it's basically Tristan, his mom, and Septimus against the three witches. Claire Danes is... His mom's kind of out of the picture. Claire Danes is sort of out of the picture, too. She's, like, strapped down. And so, two of the witches die. Septimus is killed. And then it's basically just Tristan and the big bad baddie.
Yeah.
And they square off. As you can imagine, she slaughters him just horribly. He dies, and the movie ends.
Yeah.
And it's really dark.
Right. That happened.
Yeah.
How does he like flip it around on her? Oh.
Mark's not impressed with how it ended. But anyway,
No. Tell us how it ended, Mark.
The power of love decided to defeat the
Oh
witches.
my god. Okay. Yeah. So
Mark hates love. We've established this.
I felt like this was a cop out. He's clearly bested somehow or another. Yvain gets up and like hugs him, and this is like as the witch is about to do like the death blow, and she's like, cover your eyes, and he's like, why? He's like, what do stars do? And he's like, they shine or something like that. I forget what the line is.
He's intentionally fucking this up to make it sound
yeah,
stupid.
Fine, whatever. And then she decides to just like, I don't know, supernova or whatever. Like she just starts glowing really big, and it just blows the witch up. And he asks a question, Tristan, the same question that I asked, like just out loud. Where the fuck was that, 5 minutes ago, basically? Like, when did you learn how to do that? And she's like, I couldn't because I needed to love you or something.
Her heart was broken, you fucking lug.
I couldn't do it without you.
Sure. God, I don't know. Guys, I know you loved it, and I'm not trying to shit on your
You
love.
are definitely trying to shit on it.
God, you want me to be honest, or do you want me just to roll with it? Okay?
Roll
Yes.
with it. Roll with it.
I'm not going to do that. But anyway, just like you coined an expression, I think last week, Jackson, the resolve all plots button was pushed.
Yeah.
Witch is dead. And it's clear that the princess that birthed Tristan in the beginning was the sister of the princes. So that means that Tristan has royal blood, and upon holding the...
Ruby.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was like just a gem.
It was just a clear gem until he picked it up,
Yeah,
and then it turned into a ruby.
But the king calls it a ruby. He says only a true heir can restore the color to the ruby.
Yeah, I guess we didn't even cover that.
Yeah.
Initially, when the gem is thrown out, it goes from being red to being transparent. Anyway, that's not really important.
It's not
but
super important.
It does highlight at the end that, like, he's the chosen one, more or
He's
less.
the sole surviving male heir to the Stormhold kingdom.
Yeah.
And, so he becomes king. They rule for like 80 years, and then they use a Babylon candle to travel up into the heavens and live out eternity as stars. Which is fucking baller, Mark.
Yeah. So, like, the whole movie, the witches are trying to get to the heart of the star so they can eat it. It's even... Septimus, who we didn't really allude to, is actually kind of a bad guy, because he also...
He's always been a bad guy.
Yep.
Yeah, well, they
That was never in question.
Well, there was that... You mentioned that in the climactic scene, it's the witches versus Septimus and Tristan and them, but
He was
really...
a slightly less bad baddie than them.
Yeah.
But
His intention was to get Yvain and also eat her heart.
yes.
Wow.
Because then he could live forever and be king forever.
Right. Tristan doesn't need to eat her heart because she gave it to him freely.
Because she loves him, you ass.
No, it's beautiful. So that's how they could live for the 80 years. Damn it. Wow, I didn't realize that this is going to be the thing that broke our friendship.
80 years. Give up power willingly.
Yeah.
They go live in the stars.
Yeah.
Real
Which
George
is,
Washington, whatever.
Which is Stormhold's Florida.
Queen Elizabeth could
Right?
never.
No. And here we are. Mark's complaining.
Yep.
So they fuck off to the stars. It's beautiful. Everybody's happy.
And
Except for Mark.
And Ian McKellen just eases us out.
Yeah. And roll credits.
Yeah.
On what was a remarkable movie.
I love this
Really
movie.
good movie. And Mark agrees. So that's the 3 all around.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mark, what did we like about this movie?
Okay, let me preface everything that's to come after this, because I'm gonna have fun tearing on it. I did enjoy this movie, and I'm taking a devil's advocate position because you guys don't want me to. I'm gonna act as though I hated this movie more than I did. All right, there's your little silly olive.
Aww.
This is an olive branch. Here's an olive branch for you. We can still be friends when we're done. Okay.
We can't be friends.
He's family. I'm stuck with him.
Okay.
Damn it.
God damn it. All right. So let's talk about things that we liked.
We liked.
Okay. I really enjoyed. I don't want to steal your thunder, Jackson. I enjoyed the cinematography.
I also enjoyed the cinematography. I was going to say it too.
I enjoyed the sweeping vistas.
Yes.
I enjoyed that we were basically in New Zealand.
Okay, so as far as cinematography goes, you know what, like one scene that jumped out to me that I was just like, they didn't need to do that. They did, and it was awesome, but they didn't need to do that. There was like a shot, it was all CG, but it was still fucking cool. There was a shot where like, it's a kind of like a pulled back shot of the pirate ship dirigible thing, and they sort of zoom in, and then they zoom in on like the nets that are catching the lightning, and then they basically just follow the lightning, like down the net, through the tubes, through the things that's capturing it, into the fucking bottle, and then they back out, so you can see the guys like capturing the
and
fucking
it's
lightning.
Tristan capturing the lightning.
Yeah. And Yvain as well.
Yeah.
They were capturing it together, but
That was a good scene.
That was
I
awesome.
that was
enjoyed
cool.
it. I also enjoyed the very colorful characters. Every character felt different and vibrant, and there was definitely some like I'm going to say like overacting, but I don't mean that as a negative. Like, I enjoyed the colorful personalities.
Nobody was subdued.
No.
Not at all. And I think
Even the most subdued character, in my opinion, which was Ditchwater Sal, the witch that had Una imprisoned.
yes,
That was Ditchwater Sal, and she was totally not important to the story at all, except for the fact that she was an unwitting vessel to carry the star where it needed to go. Like, everybody in this movie served a purpose in the grander scheme of the story.
Well, she did imprison his mom.
Yeah. I would say the most boring character in this entire movie is Tristan's dad.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to go initially. I was like, yeah, he's very vanilla.
Yep.
But even still, he crossed the wall and experienced magic and impregnated a princess. That's pretty baller.
I've never done it.
I've never done it.
Both of the dudes that played him were very charming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The last thing that I wrote down is something that I liked, and I know I'm kind of hogging airspace here. Just the creativity of this movie. This movie is
so fucking creative.
So, yeah.
I don't know if there's a lot of movies that could claim this level of creativity.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that aspect. The flying ship was amazing. I enjoyed all the Ghost Brothers and their riffs off each other. I thought that was super creative.
We didn't even mention the Ghost Brothers, but...
yeah, and the world building was really good.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
But that's Neil Gaiman, right? Like,
Absolutely.
That's what he does. He is so good at constructing a sort of creative new universe to explore, but he doesn't shy away from, like, one thing that oftentimes, in my opinion, makes a good fiction novel. Like, oftentimes fantasy or sci-fi, but it, general fiction, this can work too, is like, you take the world and you say, yeah, but what if this?
Mm-hmm.
One line. Yeah, but what if blah, blah, blah. And oftentimes that one change will give you just an unbelievably wide breadth of things to explore. Oh my God, it would change this and it would change all this shit too. Blah, blah, blah. And it would just sort of cascade down and really fundamentally change everything. Neil Gaiman has a tendency to not do that.
Yep.
But it's the kind of thing that, like, I wouldn't recommend to anybody who's not Neil Gaiman. He has a tendency to change a lot of elements, but be able to maintain a consistent story that feels real.
He's got a superpower for writing cohesive fantasy fiction.
Which is challenging if you don't take the prescription of, like, and then what if this one thing?
Right.
One thing. One. He's like, yeah, but I'll change 50 things, and somehow it'll still feel real, and the characters will still be vibrant, and you won't be, like, questioning, yeah, but what if blah, 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 right? Okay, so something that I loved about this movie is, like, how well-rounded it is. This movie is just any adjective you could throw at it. It's funny, it's witty, it's action-packed, it's magical, there's love, there's horror, there's thrills. Like, there's just not a lot of stuff missing from this movie, which is weird because usually when you, again, back to the Neil Gaiman, like, Million Thing Man. Usually when you have too many things in a movie, it feels like they're competing and it falls flat. But in this movie, nothing fell flat. Somehow everything worked cohesively to make a really interesting story. And it's like, typically I can't be, like, surprised or like, ooh, oh my God, that's kind of horrific. And then laughing, like, 2 scenes later. That's a very rare thing.
Well, and
right?
You've got 3 storylines playing out simultaneously, all converging on one plot point. So you've essentially got 4 main characters. You've got Tristan, you've got Yvain, you've got Septimus, and you've got Michelle Pfeiffer, who I can never remember her character's name. But you've basically got 4 main characters, 2 of which are protagonists, two of which are antagonists. None of which are on the same side. So you've got 3 narratives all playing out in very fantastical ways, in very different geographical locations. They're all touch points here and there. It's kind of hit or miss, like, I missed him this time. I'll take a shortcut and catch him on the road.
Catch him on the flip side.
Catch him on the flip side.
That's what they said. Is that catch on the flippity flip.
Yeah. I'm going to say it again. What I loved the most about this movie is the cinematography. Absolutely. There's one scene where they're casting runes to, like, find out which way to go, and Septimus throws the runes up really high, and the camera zooms in on the rune, and then as it zooms out, the witch is casting black runes, and the runes drop exactly in her hand, and it's just this beautiful transition. They had a lot of fun with the transitions between scenes, but you've got the sweep, like he said, sweeping vistas, you've got the close-up cams, you've got, like, everything you could want, and beautifully done CGI.
Yeah, well, it's 2007, so they still, I think, took the prescription of, like, CGI where we must, practical where we can.
Yeah.
Right? And I appreciated that a great deal. I think this movie is a good example of a balance, right? Like, a balanced CGI practical budget.
For example, the scene where Septimus is facing off against the witch, she basically takes a voodoo doll and plunges it underwater. and suddenly Septimus is floating around as if he were underwater in the air.
Which answered a very long open question for me. What happens if you put a voodoo doll in water?
Yeah.
I have an answer for that now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neil Gaiman.
But the fact that they filmed it with practical effects, so he's like, Mark Strong is literally under the water filming this, and they basically take that footage and just macro it onto the scene in which they're filming.
Yeah, it was a cool effect.
I thought that
enjoyed
was
that.
awesome. So cinematography won. The score was phenomenal.
It was pretty good, yeah, now that you mention it.
Like-
I didn't really give much of a thought when I was watching it, but
it evokes all of the right feelings for the scenes
it was
that
big.
you're in.
It was big. It was fantastical.
Yeah.
So, like, cinematography, I totally agree with you guys.
Amazing.
I thought it was fantastic. Not my, like, top thing, though. Like, to me, the writing and the acting deserves all the accolades in this movie. Like, the characters were written big, and everybody fit them.
Everybody delivered.
Everybody just stepped into those shoes and was fine. This is a small thing, but a small boon for casting. Tristan could absolutely be those people's children.
100%.
Like, Mark, you literally thought it was the same guy. Remember, you were like,
That's true.
is that the same guy? And I was just like, no, believe it or not, that's his kid.
And that being said, Ben Barnes and Charlie Cox do look remarkably similar.
Well, I don't think it was Charlie Cox when he was a young man.
Charlie Cox was Tristan. Ben Barnes was Dunstan.
Young Dustin.
Yes.
Before he checked in.
Yeah.
Youngston.
Youngstown.
Okay, one other thing that I really liked about this movie, again, this sort of plays off the writing, but like, everyone figures shit out really quickly.
Yeah.
And god damn it, I love that. There's nothing that I fucking hate more than like writing that relies on characters, not only ignorance, but like willful ignorance. When a character just like, they make a stupid decision because they can't fucking put the pieces together. That is so aggravating to me, and we are not waiting around. They basically, it was like, we've got so much to cram into this fucking movie. We don't have time to Eddie just waiting around for this character to figure out what the fuck's going to happen. The character's going to figure it out right away, and the strife, the challenge is going to come from circumstantial shit that's out of the character's control that's going to happen anyway.
Well, they actually make a joke of that in the scene where Primus dies. Because he's in the bath talking to Evane, and she's wearing the gem around her neck.
Yeah.
And all of the Ghost Brothers are like, the ruby, the stone, look.
It's right there, look over there.
It's right there. And then he's like, wait, that necklace. And they're like, finally.
But he doesn't miss it.
He doesn't miss it.
And
And
that's
it
the
only
thing.
takes about a minute.
Yeah. And again, sometimes, like, there are a couple of instances where this is, like, done almost a comical effect, where, like again, we've mentioned Tristan, like, just suddenly is perfectly fine with the Babylon candle. That one was maybe a bit far, but, like, everything else, like, the love, there was no, like, does she like me? Oh my god, do I like him? Oh, are we ever gonna figure this out? Us. It was just like, no, we've spent some time together, and I've come to the conclusion that I love you. Oh, really? I love you too. That's great. We're in love now. The end.
Yep.
Like, there was no
will they won't they.
Oh god, I hate it so much. And then,
no Ross and Racheling.
her turning into a rock thing, like, he saw the Stardust, and he was like, he was
like, oh shit.
Understood it. He's like, well, what happens if the rest of her body crosses that threshold? Oh my god, she will be a rock. I need to get back to the wall immediately. Fucking post-haste.
Yep.
Like, I loved how quickly the characters figured shit out in this movie. Since there was nothing that we didn't like, do we want to move on to quotes?
No, we can probably eddy a little bit on that. You know, I think we can kind of eddy on that, you know. Okay, so I'm going to throw out some things that I didn't like. You guys are going to challenge me.
Yes, we will.
And I'm going to bring up irrefutable points, and you guys are going to concede them.
Fair enough. That sounds like us.
That sounds.
We have a good history of that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're going to start off light, and I'm going to say this movie.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Mark is sweating.
Don't blame me. Blame the person that wrote the notes down while they were watching the movie. Okay?
I'm going to blame that guy. That guy happens to share the same face as you, but...
Yeah.
Okay. These adjectives are in reference to my ambiguous feeling while watching the movie. Okay? Thin and empty. Okay. Let me describe
that. Was hard to hear, but... Okay.
Yeah, I get it.
That hurt a little bit.
Yep.
But I'll allow it.
Everything that I've said up to this point, I still hold true, including thin and empty. I had a very difficult time, and it's so hard for me to articulate, kind of what I mean. It's definitely like an intangible thing. I had a hard time connecting with the universe. I appreciated it for what it was, but it felt like a story to me and not a world that was real. I appreciated the bits and pieces of it, the cogs. I appreciated the creativity and the world building, but for whatever reason, I was unable to attach myself to it. I felt like it was too clean. I felt like it never felt dirty, even though we were around pirates, and like it just felt sterile.
I feel like, I'll respond to both points, but I feel like the reason behind the sterility, even though there was like throat cutting and like, all that stuff, I feel like that is the vibe that fairy tales are meant to exude, right? They are meant to be high and tight. They're not meant for grit. They're not meant for, meandering around into sort of like tertiary characters or plot lines. They are meant to be high and tight. And basically this was a modern fairy tale that was adapted to exude that same type of vibe.
Well,
right?
I will say, to Mark's point, I get why he feels that way, because you're right. It is a fairy tale, and it reads like a fairy tale, and it plays like a fairy tale. Being that...
I think that's what I was trying to say, right? Is like, Mark, I don't think you're wrong. I just think that's what they were going for. Not the thin part. The thin part I'll address later.
Yeah. But... if you're familiar with Neil Gaiman, you know that he can get really dark. So they could have taken this movie into a rated R direction.
And I have not read the story that this is based on.
I haven't either.
It is possible that it is much darker, and they churched it up for the movie.
But even that's the thing, like, there were super dark elements. We had people getting decapitated. The witches were, like, pulling animals out of cages and then just cutting them open and playing with their entrails.
One of the witches got eaten by said animal.
Yeah.
Another one got impaled against the wall.
There were dark elements. There were things that were heavy.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I never felt connected to it. And maybe the point that you guys are bringing up, you keep calling it a fairy tale. And I previously didn't draw a distinction between fantasy and fairy tale. And maybe that's a part of the rub. That, like, I'm comparing this to fantasies. I'm comparing this to, like, Lord of the Rings and, like, other movies like that felt, like, gritty and real and, like, yes, it's a story. Obviously, this is not real. But with those types of movies, I felt like it was tangible. I never felt like this movie was tangible.
It's funny that you bring up Lord of the Rings and in the context of fairy tales, because I'm right now, I'm, like, halfway through the Tolkien Reader, which is, like, a small compilation of some of Tolkien's writings, and one of the things was, like, his opinion about what makes a fairy tale a fairy tale. And I'm not going to like bastardize it and try and remember exactly like what I heard, but it's just, it's fascinating that you brought up those two elements independently, because in the Tolkien Reader, Tolkien himself goes into what makes a fairy tale and what separates it from fantasy, which is kind of fascinating.
And again, not to go too deep into the woods, but was his explanation was it at least within the vein of what we're talking about?
I think so, yeah. I think there's there are like structural elements and like, common themes and tropes that I think he argues, if memory serves, because like I said, I'm in the middle of it, but I'm in the middle of it in the sense that I read half of it like a few months ago, and it's sitting by my bedside stand, and I've picked up another book in the meantime, so I'm like, it's a little cold for me, but as I seem to recall, yes, he talks about common themes and tropes that like make fairy tales distinct from fantasy as a genre overall.
Well, there's fantasy and then there's high fantasy.
Yes, there are subgenres of fantasy, but fairy tales are something that are sort of distinct in the sense that, like, they existed prior to our modern conception of fantasy literature.
The Princess Bride. Would we call this a fantasy? Would we call this a fairy tale?
Princess Bride is a fantasy.
Okay.
I would say all fairy tales would fall under the auspice of fantasy. I think they are very specialized and, like I said, so specialized in the sense that, like, they didn't grow out of the genre. They were something that were independent. They were something that, like, fairy tales were told to children hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago,
I would not classify Princess Bride as a fairy tale under the auspices of fantasy.
I feel like you could make a well-reasoned argument that it would be, but...
And the only reason I bring it up is that, like, that's very different from like Tolkien's work, or and maybe I should be more specific, the cinematic interpretations of Tolkien's work, because we're just talking about movies. Princess Bride felt tangible, There was something that prevented me from connecting to this world, even though I could appreciate its nuances and its nuts and bolts.
So I said we're going to circle back to Thin and the inability to connect. Do you think maybe, and this is like you said, it's intangible, you don't know what's causing you to feel that way. Do you think possibly that you would have felt different if we watched this on a different night? Like, is this just like how it's hitting you now, or do you feel like this is a sort of fundamental characteristic of the movie?
And I mean, that's impossible for me to like.
Right. Just gut feeling. Like, do you feel like it's something that might be different if you felt slightly different or watched it by yourself or with your kids versus with us?
I don't think so, because I still, it didn't inhibit me from appreciating many aspects of this movie. Because like I said, I would recommend this. I do fall over the 50%. There are a lot of things that I would call out as being awesome about this movie, but there's a barrier for me. So I can't answer your question, but that's how I would try to create a foundation for my opinion, that I feel like I'm able to like be a little bit more objective with my pros and cons. Anyway, should we move on to another thing that I didn't like?
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Good luck refuting this. Convenient plot points were everywhere in this movie. Like, I mean, we talked about the whole, like, I couldn't, like, explode and, like, kill off the bad guy because I wasn't around you long enough. Like, that didn't, like, what? Like, that felt so convenient, I don't know. It just felt...
I feel like that's the nature of, like, not only, like, fantasy in general, but, like, a fairy tale, right? Is like, why didn't she just slit Rumpelstiltskin's throat and, like, get out of there? Like, I don't know. I just, like, back to the Thin thing. It feels like a Thin thing to attack on in the sense that it's just like, there are going to be convenient plot points because that's what makes it fantastical.
See, I don't think that the supernova was thin at all. And here's why. How do you feel when the person you love most hugs you very tightly?
I feel right.
Okay. She was under the impression that Tristan had left her. She was absconded by the witches, and suddenly he shows up to save the day, and she is over the moon, overjoyed, like, ecstatic. And you can see she's physically glowing, but she's also in the throes of trauma. She sees a way out. She has an idea. And she grabs him and she holds him very warmly. And the feelings that act evoked caused her to glow in such a way that was irrevocable.
But again, like, those plot points, right? Like, that's what makes it amazing. There is a genre of fantasy that doesn't deal in convenient plot points and, like, near misses. It's written by George R.R. Martin. And it's just like, this is what happens when we pull out all of the sort of, like, convenient saves.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
people die.
And they die horribly. And then other people take their place. And then those people die horribly.
Yep.
And that's just it, right? Is like, what makes a good fantasy tale is the characters almost meeting their maker over and over and over, only to be saved by really convenient things. Wasn't it so convenient that Luke just happened to have, like, a grappling hook belt buckle that he could swing across this random chasm in the middle of the Death Star when escaping with Leia?
Wasn't it, like, super convenient?
It was so convenient that he had that. It doesn't make Star Wars a bad movie. That makes it sci-fi and fantasy, right? Is like, you have to have these near misses.
Wasn't it super convenient that the One Ring happened to fall into the hands of someone that was so very not easily corrupted as would an elf or a man or a dwarf or an orc, but a lowly hobbit?
I mean, it meandered a bit.
All I'm saying is convenience doesn't necessarily make a bad plot point.
That's fair.
But again, without the convenience, it's usually a really shitty story.
Yeah.
Right? It's because like, if something amazing didn't happen, then we wouldn't be interested in it.
Because without the convenience, Tristan would have been killed, the star would have been eaten, and the witch would have lived forever, which I still would watch that, but it's not the same movie.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. The only concession that I will make
is popcorn.
Yeah, that's fine. Maybe what we are butting into is a genre that I don't enjoy as much. Because the things that you guys are bringing up, I can't necessarily refute them, and they do stitch together well and whatnot. Maybe I just don't dig on the fairy tale aspect of it.
And that's valid.
I don't know. Like, I like that sort of putting a bow on it, but if it weren't for the fact that you brought up Princess Bride, which I would sort of lay the...
You call that fairy tale?
I would say that has very, very... If I wouldn't call it fairy tale outright, I would say it has super duper strong elements of fairy tale. And the fact that, like, you like that and didn't like this suggests that something else might be the cause for... I shouldn't say you didn't like this, but you like that considerably more than you like this. There were things about this that bugged you, suggests that those elements may not be the fact that it's fairy tale, but may be rooted in something else.
And it's impossible for me to compare them one-to-one because Princess Bride is just dripping in nostalgia for me, so I'm completely biased.
I think that, I mean, again, kind of back to the whole, like, if you'd watch this alone, if you'd watch this with, you know, your kids or whatever like that, maybe if you watched this in 2007 when Jackson and I watched it, maybe you'd have a different connection to it.
And I would say that...
Which maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing for the viewing audience, right? Is we're trying to steer people to movies that we think are really good, and maybe Jackson and I have, like, a little bit of blinders on when it comes to...
lenses.
Yeah, it comes to this movie.
I don't know.
Probably not, because Jackson and I are, like, really, really good at picking out great movies, and we're very objective all the time.
All the time.
And Mark is terrible at it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm known for.
We thought he was really good until this movie, and then, you know...
Starting to rethink some things.
It's fine, you know. I don't have to be surrounded by people that are right all the time. Sometimes I can be surrounded by people that are wrong.
That's true.
I'm not saying you guys are wrong.
And
I'm just saying
listen,
sometimes.
Jackson and I are the best at that too.
It's true.
We are the best at being right and wrong.
I'm a pro.
But no, I really do think that, like, having the opinion of somebody who didn't see this at sort of a formative age, even though, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say formative age. I mean, I was an adult, but I was a very young adult. You know, it was still like...
I was knee deep in my teens when I saw this.
Whoa, I did not see you using that adjective. But okay, yes.
I deeply regret it now.
Yeah, but no, I think having that perspective is important. Was there anything else that you super duper liked, Mike?
Well, we did transition into didn't likes.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Saw right through it.
Sorry. Those were the things that I kind of brought up, and I think it could all be sort of just summed up with I had a very difficult time connecting to this movie, even though I enjoyed all of the individual pieces. It just didn't resonate with me the same way that it did with you guys.
I would say the only thing that I didn't like was the minor inconsistencies, which can be explained away. We already talked about the magic required to transmute a chariot into an ant. There's no explanation as to why Ditchwater Sal can use magic without aging. There's no explanation as to why the other two witches can use, like, battle magic without aging. But, again, it's not really that important. It's fairy tale, I'll allow it. But it was just one of those, I'm like, I wonder why they can use magic and they don't get old. Maybe it's because they're already super old.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the magic that was making her young, and by the time she'd expended all that magic, she was just back to her normal form, and the other witches were already in their, like, default phases.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at, was like, maybe it's because they're already super old and they haven't absorbed any magic.
But it's fantasy, and they're very unapologetic in their construction of it, so we could just be like, yeah, it could literally be anything.
Yep.
Like,
there's no sense quibbling over what it could be.
Right.
But I was just kind of like, I wonder why.
And honestly, that's a really smart move, because the second you start bringing into it, this is how the magic works, you are opening yourself up for plot holes.
Yep.
And so by not doing it, I think they save themselves a lot of trouble.
By not writing any rules to the game, you can't break any rules to the game.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And even though I brought up these things to kind of pick at it, none of these things pulled me out of... I know I just got saying I had a hard time connecting with it, but, like, these little inconsistencies, that wasn't the reason why, you know? I didn't even notice that the other witches were using it. So, like, I bring those things up for fun, not because those were elements that I disliked or that I would count as negative towards the movie.
Are we ready to move on to quotes?
Quotes!
Who wants to lead us off?
I will, because I had one, and it was a throwaway line that I don't feel is good. At some point, one of the characters says, "You stupid cow," and it made me chuckle, and I wrote it down. Like I said, I had a hard time connecting with it, so I'm going to kind of, like, back out and say that none of these quotes really jumped out at me. So you guys take the floor.
Way to be a stupid cow, Mark.
Yep.
I will take that one.
I'm sorry, I had to because of the quote, but
I wrote that one down as well. So in the scene where they are trying to evade the witch by using the Babylon candle and they get stuck in the clouds, he says, "What did you do?" And she says, "What did I do? What did you do? What do you mean, think of home? You thought of home and I thought of home and we ended up halfway between." And he goes, "Oh, you stupid cow, what did you think of home for?"
Yeah, that's the full line.
So I have multiple. Elin McClellan. So 5 quotes, including that one. My first one is when he gets back from getting his ass beat by the guard at the wall and talks to his dad. He's holding a stake over his black eye, and his dad goes, "Oh man, did you get in a fight with Humphrey again?" And he goes, "No, it was the guard at the wall." He says, "Tristan, the guard is 97 years old." "Yeah, well, that's given him plenty of time for practice now, hasn't it?"
Mm-hmm.
My second one is right after he crashes into a vein and decides, "Oh, hey, you're a star. Perfect. I'm going to take you home to Victoria and give you as a birthday present," because that's a normal thing that people do. She says, "Oh yeah, nothing says romance like the gift of a kidnapped, injured woman."
That is among the more recognizable quotes in this movie. I do love that. Because it all boils down to that.
Right. And when they got captured by Captain Shakespeare and his crew, his band of merry misfits, he's talking about all the ways they could die. He says, "Well, once we get out of here, if we don't get murdered by pirates." And she goes, "Murdered by pirates, heart cut out and eaten, meet Victoria. Can't decide which sounds more fun."
I love that Meet Victoria was on the same, on par with...
Right up there with getting your heart
getting my heart cut out and eaten, yeah. Which, having seen and heard Victoria...
yeah.
Yeah, it's not far off.
Yeah.
Get it.
My last one, she's on the deck of the ship dancing with Captain Shakespeare. They're waltzing. And he says, "I know what you are. Don't worry. No one on this crew will hurt you." And she says, "How did you know?" And he goes, "You're glowing." She goes, "Well, of course I'm glowing. I'm a star. And what do stars do best?" And he says, "Well, certainly not the waltz."
Jesus. It was like the most unnecessarily
Way
savage
to just
line.
kick her when she's down, man.
Does not have to insult her dancing.
Ugh.
But that's true.
He wasn't wrong.
He
but,
wasn't wrong.
It's don't have to be rude about it. Okay, so I've got 3 quotes left. So the first one is Victoria at the secret picnic with Tristan. She's talking about how Humphrey is going to Ipswich to pick up a ring, and he puts it together that it's a wedding ring, and rumor has it he's going to propose on her birthday. Tristan says to her, "And you intend to say yes?" And she goes, "Well, I can't exactly say no after he's on all the way to Ipswich." Which is
like it's far.
Amazing. But also, like, they went out of their way, so I guess I'll spend the rest of my life with them.
Right. He went to the next town over. Like, that's kind of a big deal, I guess.
The next one is Robert De Niro's character, Captain Shakespeare. As we said, in private, he's very fabulous. And he's, like, talking to them, again, about how he doesn't love his line of work and how he would like to do other things. And they're basically like, "Why don't you dress how you want, act how you want, blah, blah, blah." And at one point he goes, "You ever try to get bloodstains out of a silk shirt? Nightmare." Just so good. It's so, like, even though this is kind of early in his character, it's so on brand for his character.
Absolutely.
I freaking love it.
No one could have delivered that line better than Robert De Niro.
Oh my god, dude. The fact
Which
that
doesn't
Robert
sound
De
like,
Niro...
when you say it, it doesn't sound right.
It doesn't.
Like, it doesn't sound like, it honestly sounds like nobody would have delivered that line worse than Robert De Niro until you see him in action and you're like, oh no. Oh no. He's perfect.
Yep.
He's like the perfect casting for this. And then my last line is probably my favorite line in the entire movie. So Tristan and Septimus are outside the witch's mansion, and at the end of the movie, they've got Claire Danes and Tristan's mom, and they're about to do some killing. So he and Septimus kind of team up, even though Septimus is kind of a shithead. They team up and they decide to sort of storm the palace together. And Septimus is kind of giving them a plan, like, you do this, and I'm going to do this, and blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, Tristan, like, sort of interrupts him, and he goes, "Wait, how do I know you can be trusted?" And Septimus goes, "You don't. Why? Do you have a choice?" And Tristan just goes, "No." And Septimus was like, "Okay, well, let's go."
It's so on point.
It's so on point. It's like, "I don't know you can be trusted." He, like, what's great is Septimus's face is like genuine confusion. Like, why? Do you have a choice? Do you have a choice that I'm not aware of?
Right.
Because
I'm open to options.
Yeah,
here.
I was under the impression that you didn't have a choice. But if you have something that you are not sharing with me, please let me know. Like, it wasn't, you don't have a choice. It was, wait, why? Do you have a choice?
It's like, is there a plan B that I wasn't aware of?
And then, of course, he confirms no, and then he goes, yeah, well, okay, then the plan I was just describing is what we're going to do. So
get on with it.
Get the fuck in the mansion.
Open the door and do some killing, man.
Are we ready to... Are we Lurdern? Are we ready to rate this?
I believe we are.
Let's rate this a beach. Who wants to start us off?
I think you should, Mark.
Oh.
Jackson thinks you should, and I agree.
I'm very eager to hear this.
I'm going to give this a 5.8.
Okay.
Rubies.
That's okay.
All right.
Okay.
It's
all right.
It's
all right.
over the 50% mark.
I got you. Yeah. No, I got you. I got you.
Rubies were a fundamental part of this movie.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're with you.
Is your hesitation on my metric?
Whatever.
It's on my metric, isn't it?
No,
it's on my metric, isn't it? You wanted me to pick a different metric?
No.
You wanted me to pick a different metric.
I
Well,
think you're good.
I'm sticking with this metric, Rubies.
No, it's funny. It's funny you say 5.8 because I feel like based on what you sort of said, described your perception of this movie, I feel like 5.8 is pretty spot on from what I was picking up from you.
Yeah.
So I'm not actually surprised at that.
I was expecting...
If you had gone below 5, I would have, I think, thrown hands, but you're good. You're good.
Thanks. I'm glad that you guys approved my subjective rating. It means a lot to me that I got your approval on my rating.
Jorkson?
I liked this movie more than Mark.
How many more?
9.1.
Holy shit. Holy shit.
But it does track. He said he's seen the thing like 100 times.
Yeah.
It is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Wow.
9.1 Gay Lightning Pirates.
Ooh. That's better than Rubies.
No, I own this movie in 3 different formats, and I watch it regularly. It is also one of Alyssa's favorite movies.
And that's saying something.
Yes.
Based upon everything we've heard.
Yes.
Because she don't like the movies.
She might actually listen to this episode if I tell her what movie it is.
I meant no offense by that, Alyssa. None.
Okay, so I will give this movie 7.1 fratricides.
Oh.
That's a good word. That's a good word.
Is that what you were just Googling?
I was confirming that the plural of fratricide was fratricides, and not something wonky like fratricide
or
something
fratricidity.
Like that. Fratricidity.
But in what context would you use fratricide?
A brother killed
plural?
another.
I was going to say, in the context of a brother killing a sibling.
In a plural aspect.
You have 2 brothers. You've killed both of them.
You've committed multiple fratricides.
Correct.
Sure. Fratricider? What would be one who perpetrates?
Fratricider.
Fratricider.
Okay.
So what other ratings might we have for this?
Do we have another rating? Like a scene score?
Scene score.
We're getting better at that.
Yeah.
Every week.
Ooh.
Okay, so here's the rating. It's chilling. Dang, that is a sweet rating, you might say.
You might say.
Let's kick it off with our familiarity. We had a pretty good response this week. Thank you to everybody who responded. Average familiarity out of 10 was a 3.5.
Wow.
I think that's probably where I thought it would be.
I expected more.
Really, I think in the general population I would expect less, but because I think we have a little bit of a biased sample.
We do.
Sample.
Yeah.
Our average score was 7.3, which I think is super appropriate because it's only 0.2 off of what I gave it. So,
And it's only 2 below mine, and it's only 2 above Mark's. So
this could be our biggest spread of any movie.
I think you might be right.
But we did a good job of like, Jackson, you went real high, I went real low.
I think you went real moderate.
Well, yeah.
Again, still over the 50% mark.
Yeah,
You went like aggressively moderate. You were like, oh my god, I gotta pick a color for this room. I'm gonna pick beige.
I was uncharacteristically low.
I would say that's accurate.
Yeah.
Typically, I float in like the 6 to 7.
I was going to say, you don't typically rate that low.
So the scene score, with sort of like a good amount of familiarity, not a ton, but a decent amount of familiarity, and a 7.3 on our average score, is a 7.8.
Wow.
Which, yeah, right? I mean, Mark, you'd give it, you said 5.8, but you'd give it an extra little something because this movie is the kind of movie that just...
I'm happy to have seen it, and I would recommend it because it was enjoyable.
It's a good rec to have in the back pocket, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would recommend this to anybody that breathes.
Mark breathed.
Hey, Mark.
Yes?
Did you ever watch Stardust?
Oh, I did recently see that.
Yeah?
What'd
you think?
I gave it a 5.8 rubies.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. That's respectable.
Okay. So, 7.8 scene score. That is all for the All Crep review for Laura Dern.
We are.
We are.
Thank you for listening. If you have ideas for movie reviews, please check out our brand spanking new form where you can submit movies. We're going to try and do this little thing where every once in a while, we're still kind of playing around with the idea, but we're thinking maybe once every 5 movies or so. We're going to take an audience recommendation at random, and we'll review that instead of our very well-curated list, and gives you guys kind of a way to throw something at us, a curveball, especially something that maybe I haven't seen, which would be cool. Not that I've seen every movie out there, but like we said, this is a biased sample. It's coming out of my collection. So, or if you've got other movies that seem similar to movies that we've reviewed, please reach out to us at 3, that is the number 3, menandabasement@gmail.com. Send us an email. We'll read it out on the air. Is this the air, technically?
Yeah.
It's a recording. Yeah. We'll read it out on the air, the ether, and, it'll kind of help point people in the direction of other movies that they might enjoy. You can also check us out at our website, TMAAB. That stands for 3 Men and a
Basement.podbean.com.
You can sign up for our newsletter, get a short weekly-ish survey. Also, be sure to check out Planet Mud. It is not only an exceedingly graphic porn, as Mark has pointed out. I love how we're just maintaining this porn.
Yep.
It's not porn.
No.
It is a porn.
Yes.
Which hits the ear
It is
horribly.
It is a one singular porn.
I mean, that's a dirty planet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Voluptuous.
Yes.
It's got mountains. They are opening up for Goat Tits Up with their hit single, Surprousal.
One of my all-time favorites.
You love getting surprised.
Absolutely.
They're a bad band, I tell you what.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you there with the I tell you what. It's the kind of thing that, the fellas from King of the Hill would listen to Goat Tits Up.
Mm-hmm.
And then Saggy Witch Tits. They're headlining, but they're not going to be on for much later. You got to wait for the magic to wear off.
Yep.
It's a guilty pleasure of mine. Them saggy witch titties.
They're fantastic.
I love how they're not always the same,
Yeah.
Sometimes one can be a little different than the other,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You
sometimes
could say-
the stage is a little heavy on the right.
Right.
Keeps you guessing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not left, but,
So all these bands and more are on tour now. You can also find us, the 3 Men, the All Creps, on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Until then, I am Colin McLeod.
Mark up.
Action Jackson.
And we will see you in cyberspace.
Ellen McClellan.
Surprousal.